Welcome back, everybody, to TJ Works Wood. Glad to have you. I forgot to film the glue up of the legs for this solid walnut entry table that we're going to be building, but you can watch the video on my dining table build. I'll link it up top, and you can watch the first couple minutes of that if you want to watch a glue up of legs. With the two pieces glued up to just make one solid laminate piece here, what I am doing is just going to clean up some of the glue off the edges and then run them through the table saw, get them kind of all jointed up, flat edges, uniform to each other. So that way when we make our jig here in just a little bit, everything will be exactly the same. So when we cut the legs to shape, put the taper on them, they'll all match and they won't have any abnormalities between them. Now that we have those legs all squared up on the sides, let's square up the ends. And we'll just go ahead and square up one end on each individual leg. That way we can use those flat, perfectly 90-degree ends as our reference to cut them to length. And now that we have a good reference end on one end of each leg, we'll go ahead and just mark off the length that we want it. In this case, I marked 33 inches, and I'll line that up with the blade and then put my stop block right where I need it, lock that down, and then now I can have repeatable cuts for each individual leg. Here I'm going to put a 5-degree line on both ends of the legs and have them run in parallel. That way I can measure about 3 inches in from each end and connect those 2 points at an angle to give each leg a taper. The back legs will only have one taper on it because they're going to be up and down, vertical with on the very back. The front legs will have a double taper. So I'm going to build a jig that will set up this one board, and then all I have to do is put each leg in it after cutting the first leg, and each leg will be identical. And then we'll have to do a little adjustment to put that second taper on there, but I'm marking the reference line so I can put the edge of the jig right up against this reference line on both ends, so I know that the cut will go down the desired tapered line. Go ahead and make the base of the jig. I've got a factory cut edge on one end, so I'm just going to run it through here and make sure I have a perfectly flat and straight line on the other side, so I can use that as a reference to cut the legs. Once the jig is complete, I can just cut one leg, take it out, put the next one in, and cut it again exactly perfect. Now this board isn't exactly flat, but we will do our best to flatten it out by slapping on a big piece of 2x4 scrap. I'm going to go ahead and make a jig here to align each leg perfectly. I learned this on Four Eyes, Chris Solomone's channel. I'll put a link to his YouTube channel. It's really great. He actually has a couple projects that inspired me to make this entryway table. But what I'm doing here is just making a jig to where the reference lines that I put on the end of the legs are now at the very edge of the jig. And I'll put a brace here because I don't really want to get my fingers that close, so this is going to hold it down nice and tight while I run it through the table saw. So once I get the first leg cut, I can really easily and simply get it in the jig real easily and quick. And now we're ready to cut the next leg. After running everything through the jigs, you can see the pieces are going to be exactly the same, which makes all of the legs uniform and perfect. So let's go ahead and cut the other two and get this table going. Now that we've got all four legs cut, we'll readjust our jig so we can put the second taper on the other legs up front. And then we'll run two of the legs through here so they will match each other perfectly again, so we'll have a uniform setup. So I'll go ahead and just stand here in front of the camera so you can't see what I'm doing. But to let you know, I am adding a piece of stock here that will be part of the side curtain / supports for the legs. And I just need to mark the entire width or thickness of the stock so I know where to put my half lap joint. Go ahead and get the blade height right where we need it. It just needs to be the thickness of the board that we're going to use, so that way when we cut our half lap, it'll kind of line up perfectly on one end. And we'll go ahead and put our stop blocks here to A, hold down the piece, and B, show where to stop. So let's do some test cuts. Okay, so you always want to do some test cuts first. Got this pretty close to being right at what I need. Little, there's a curve of the blade that needs a little adjustment, but I think we got it locked in, dialed in. So we'll go ahead and make the cuts on the legs. So we'll go ahead and get this half lap joint cut. Using these stop blocks, you'll just put one cut at the cut line and then just kind of nibble away at it. If you had a dado stack, obviously this would go a lot faster, be a lot easier, but my table saw doesn't accommodate a dado stack, so I just have to go 1/8 inch at a time. Since the front legs are going to have kind of an angle on them, I had to set the angle here on my crosscut jig. This is something that was hard to get precise, you'll see later on, but it worked. So 2 legs like this, and yeah, came out pretty good. Again, a dado stack would make this way easier. Hopefully I'll get a saw stop or something in the future if anybody wants to donate one. That would be great. So we're going to mark a 1-inch line here to line up the back legs away from the actual back of the table. That way it gives us some room for the baseboards at the bottom, yet the top of the table will be up against the wall. Now that we have that reference line made, I'll go ahead and glue the back leg of the table on and get it clamped. That way it's nice and supported. Make sure everything's squared up. The front legs, since they kind of angle out, the goal here is to have the base of the legs be 12 inches out and be roughly 33 inches tall. I made the legs extra long, so I had some leeway so I could cut them down to width instead of just crossing my fingers and hoping that I got them right on the first try. So I'll go ahead and glue this down. So we got the first set of legs glued up. You can kind of see how it's going to look now a little better. Let's see here. Yeah, like that. So this is going to be straight up and down, little angles. Yeah, well, that's it for tonight. I'll work on the other legs, maybe off camera, and then have a table. All right, now that we have the legs attached to the upper sides, we'll go ahead and kind of get it just roughly sanded, for lack of a better term, and then take it over to the miter saw, and we're going to do some accent cuts just to kind of give it a more modern look. We're going to start off with a 60-degree cut and then kind of chop off the nose with a 30-degree cut, and we'll match up the front support / front apron with that 30 degrees just to kind of give it like I said, more sleek, more modern look. You'll see that in just a little while. That's going to be actually on the second video when we start putting all that together. So definitely subscribe, hit the bell so you know when my videos come out, and you'll see the second part of this table build.
That's the main question.
So again, we're going to have this be 12 inches from the back of the back leg to the front of the front leg at the very bottom. As you can see, the front legs aren't exactly lined up, but you're not going to notice that when it's fully put together. So what I'm doing here is just finding out exactly where we're going to be at about 32, 33 inches. And I kind of had to make, I guess you would call this a jig, but we're going to cut 2 legs down to size, and then we'll be able to use this exact jig again to cut the other 2 legs, and they'll be perfectly aligned. Now, I have these legs built. The second part of the build will be putting on the supports and actually connecting this and making a table. So like I said, go ahead and push the subscribe button, hit the bell, and we'll see you on the next one.